Chair Garlick, Chair Lewis, and the esteemed members of the Joint Committee on Education. My name is Erin Stewart, and I run the School to Prison Pipeline Project at Citizens for Juvenile Justice. Today, I am testifying in support of H.455 and S.249, an act relative to ensuring equal access to education for all students. Stark disparities in treatment between students of color, students with disabilities, and students in other subgroups not only hamper and disrupt the education of these students, they also correspond to disparities we see in the juvenile and criminal justice systems. Students who are subjected to out-of-school discipline are twice as likely to be involved with law enforcement and the juvenile justice system during the period of their removal. Students who are suspended or expelled from school just once are much more likely to be disciplined similarly again, and they are twice as likely as their peers to drop out of school. Students dropping out of school are ultimately 3.5 times as likely to be incarcerated during their lifetime, compared to students who are not excluded from school. The lack of publicly available data on the intersection of the racial, ethnic, gender, disability, and English language learners' status identities of our students acts as a barrier to our collective ability to identify and effectively address these disparities and to drive improved outcomes for all students. This legislation will address that problem by directing the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education to publish data that it already collects in a manner that is analyzed by student subgroups so that it is easier for educators, parents, students, communities, and policymakers to use it to improve outcomes for specific groups of students. While data is currently accessible by race, ethnicity, sex, English learner status, and disability, this bill takes the important step of making cross-variable data, which illuminates the performance of students who fall in multiple or overlapping categories, accessible. Not only will this data help policymakers and advocates, it will better inform and empower parents in making educational decisions that are best for their children. A parent who is considering the educational impact of moving from one town and school district to another should be able to easily access information on how children with similar identities to their own are treated in that district. This legislation does not require school districts or the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education to collect any new data. Rather, it requires the publishing of already collected data for specific subgroups of students, thus reflecting the multifaceted identities of Massachusetts' students. At Citizens for Juvenile Justice, it is part of my job to request data in this type of cross-tabulated form from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education and share it through our website to provide the type of information reflecting the treatment of children with multiple overlapping identities that parents, students, and teachers deserve. But it should not fall on attorneys or nonprofit organizations to do this. Our state agencies should be charged with publishing this important and crucial information that is needed for parents and students to properly evaluate whether school districts are treating students in a truly equitable fashion. It is for these reasons that we respectfully urge you report H.454 and S.249 favorably.
Thank you. Who's next?
Good afternoon. My name is what? All right, back it up.
Nope, that's good. It's
Okay,
good to have it close.
Good afternoon. My name is Jevon Okundaye, and I am the Racial Equity and Access Program Assistant at Massachusetts Advocates for Children. MAC's Racial Equity and Access Program works collaboratively to transform K-12 education into a racially equitable system in Boston. I am a Black autistic young man who attended a Boston public school and a Boston charter school. I am testifying in favor of House Bill 454 and Senate Bill 249, an act to ensure equitable access to education, including special education services for all students in Massachusetts. I think that it is important for the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education to report student-specific education data in a cross-tabulated manner because students have intersectional identities that are not mutually exclusive and equally impact their experience in school. For example, as a Black autistic boy, I faced many challenges in school due to my race, gender, and disability. One challenge I faced was dealing with teachers' lower expectations of me. Due to racism and ableism, teachers often underestimate the potential of students of color with disabilities. As a result, Black and Latina boys with disabilities are disproportionately placed in separate special education classrooms and unable to learn alongside students without disabilities. In fact, I was nearly held back a year in kindergarten despite meeting all of the academic requirements for promotion to the first grade because I had a disability. Teachers often have biases and negative perceptions about Black boys with disabilities and think that they cannot learn the same material as their peers without disabilities. As a result, I started first grade a month behind my peers, which made it hard for me to catch up academically. This contributes to the academic achievement gap. Another challenge I faced was dealing with teachers' stereotypical perceptions of me. Due to racism and ableism, teachers view the behavior of students of color with disabilities with more scrutiny. They often adultify these students and perceive them as troublesome and disruptive. As a result, Black and Latina boys with disabilities are disproportionately disciplined and criminalized. In fact, my principal once gathered all of the predominantly boys of color together to discuss our behavior, which made us feel criminalized. This disturbing trend in discipline contributes to the school-to-prison pipeline. If House Bill 454 and Senate Bill 249 are passed, the public will get access to information about the disparities faced by Black boys with disabilities and other subgroups of students. If passed, this bill will make it easier for education advocates to address the inequities many students face and identify bias and discrimination in schools. The public needs access to cross-tabulated special education and school discipline data about students, such as Black boys with disabilities, in order to better support underserved groups of students, which can in turn help narrow the academic achievement gap and dismantle the school-to-prison pipeline. This bill would have made a difference for me in that I might not have fallen behind in school and might not have felt criminalized. Thank you.
Thank you for your powerful testimony. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Garlick and Chair Lewis and the Education Committee for the opportunity to speak in support of the Act to ensure equitable access to education, including special education services for all students in Massachusetts. My name is Iman Hassan. I'm an attorney at Massachusetts Advocates for Children. I specialize in special education and disability law, but really I'm an advocate for children, and I think deeply about barriers that are created both unintentionally or intentionally to students who want to show up as the full human selves that they are. Having access to data is the first step to understanding what is happening in our school districts when we fail or children or create barriers for them. One of the panels earlier stated that students with disabilities or adults with disabilities want to be seen as whole. And so when we look at data, we have to look at data in nuanced ways that see humans as complex beings with multiple identities in order to see them as whole. And so really what this bill does is look at all the systemic issues with these nuances. And DESE does an incredible job at collecting all of these different data points. They have all the raw data, and they have really amazing workers that can easily cross-tabulate it and publish that data, just as they publish the data that allow us right now to see the inequities that happen in any exclusion for children, both short-term, long-term, or permanent exclusion. In my field, I work with children all the time. I've done a case where it was a Black child in a sub-separate classroom with a disability on the spectrum. The recent immigrated family, low income, English language learner, and unfortunately, his manifestation of his disability through the action of accidentally hitting a staff member was seen as aggressive and was disciplined, almost disciplined, by excluding him permanently. Thankfully, his parents, through advocates within the school, allowed him to connect with MAC and find a legal representative. I come into the meeting and I realized that none of the initial documentations and notifications to the parents for the permanent exclusion of their child were ever translated. So you have this family not aware of any of their rights, not aware of what is even taking place, because it wasn't done in the target language. Furthermore, you have a family that is low income and new to the whole process of the American education system. On top of it, we have the internalization of racial narratives that Jevon just talked about a young black child that had a manifestation of his dysregulation in a classroom. And unfortunately, instead of seeing this child as a child that was dysregulated, the school district tried to permanently exclude a 13-year-old boy. So, yes, the child found a legal advocate and the child remained in school. We made amendments to the IEP and created a better environment for that child. In just one case, I saw multiple failures of a system. And so in order to understand these failures, we have to cross-tabulate the data points that I just spoke about. And all we do is ask DESE to do that work. That work should not be done by legal advocates or incredible nonprofits that do this work currently. It should be done by our government. It should be done through the regulatory sector. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Anybody? All right. Yes, Representative Senna.
I don't have a question, just a comment of thank you for educating us about these issues. Certainly we are aware of these inequities, but I think hearing I want to add my name to this bill right now, just from hearing your testimony. So I just want to say thank you for sharing your story. And I certainly am going to review a little further, but I don't think you answered everything you could at the moment, so thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate that support.
Your testimony certainly has had an impact, as you can see. All right, thank you very much.